Hello and welcome to Macy Cooks. We're going to mix it up today and we're going to do something a little bit different. Now typically I do bread baking videos, but I thought that it might be kind of fun to start a new playlist on my channel that consists of 30-minute dinner recipes. Now truth be told, my inspiration for this is that some nights I'm not feeling it. I don't feel like going all out and cooking something huge. In fact, there's some nights that I really just want to pull something out of the freezer. So my thoughts were, if we came up with some recipes that we could cook in a larger portion and then freeze, it would be simple to be able to pull them out on a weeknight for the kids. Let me just explain. It'll be easier just to explain and just be honest. So here it is. This afternoon I decided to take my kids to the park to go play and have a lunch picnic. We got everything out of the car and to the picnic table before we realized it was so windy that it was literally blowing the Chick-fil-A sauce across the table. So we decided to eat in the car. So we huddled into the front seat and ate quickly with the intention of getting out to go play after we'd eaten. When I got out and went around the car to go get the kids out, I opened the door and my 18-month-old fell out. Don't panic, grandparents. I caught her. I used my foot. My point here is not to drive home that I was not sent home from the hospital with a handbook and have absolutely no idea what I'm doing and I'm literally winging it every day. The point is to say that some days you're just not feeling it. You know, you're not with it, you're not on your A game, and you need to be able to pull something out of the freezer. So we're going to start a playlist full of 30-minute meals that you can bake ahead of time, put into the oven, and then pull out when you're not feeling it, or on a day that you decide to catch your child with your foot. Today, we're making my interpretation of chili mac. Now the idea for this playlist, aside from being able to create meals that are quick and that can go in the freezer for later, is that ideally the ingredients would be things that you already have in your pantry. But if you don't, then that's something you might want to consider, that there are certain staples that you should keep in your pantry all the time. There's only one ingredient today that I'm going to use that I don't typically have in the pantry, and it's a spice that my good friend sent me. It's called black urfa chili. However, if you do not have black urfa chili, which I'm not going to be surprised if you don't, you can just substitute for chili powder or any type of dried chili. You will need for this recipe a heaping tablespoon of smoked paprika, a heaping tablespoon of cumin, a tablespoon of whatever your chili of your choosing is, salt and pepper to taste, so we'll deal with that later. A box of pasta. So I had rigatoni, that's what I'm going to use. However, you can use whatever you want. Also 3 cloves of garlic, a can of diced tomatoes, a pound of hamburger meat ground and browned, 8 ounces of pepper jack cheese or whatever cheese you need to get rid of, and lastly, a green bell pepper and an onion diced. P.S. That's not rigatoni, that's rotini. They didn't send me home from the hospital with a handbook, and I also don't know what I'm doing in the kitchen. One last thing before we get started. Go ahead and get a pot of water boiling for the rotini. Preheat your oven to 375. I did go ahead and brown that hamburger meat. I used a ratio of 73 to 27 for the fat. I wouldn't go much higher than that with fat content, otherwise your pasta is going to be really greasy. I usually use 80-20, but the 73-27 was on sale. What can you do? As you can see, I did leave some of that fat in the skillet. I did have to get some of it out because it was too much. So if the fat content on your beef is too high and you see that it's going to be like swimming in fat, just kind of get some out with a paper towel. To that skillet, add your bell pepper and your onion. Add a pinch of salt, a few cracks of fresh pepper, add the 3 garlic cloves, give it a stir while it comes up to temperature, and then, BAM! By adding the spices to the fat and the heat, you are blooming them and making all their wonderful little compositional parts stick out. If you see that you may have taken out too much fat, just dibble some in there. Some vegetable oil will work fine. This right here is my squeeze bottle. No, but seriously, it's vegetable oil in a squeeze bottle. I just think it's easier, and it also helps to avoid scorching. If you see that something is getting a little dry and in danger of burning, just hit it with a little olive oil. This isn't olive oil. Vegetable oil. Now this is certainly different than your standard chili mac. This is not Hormel or Wolf brand chili poured into some mac and cheese, which, let's face it, is delicious. But the purpose of this is to be able to clean out some items that you probably have in your fridge or your pantry and make it into something comforting and familiar, maybe with possibly an elevated flavor. Now once you see that those peppers and onions are starting to saute and they're softening, we don't really want them to be super ultra brown. We're just looking for tender. Go ahead and add that can of diced tomatoes. Then add your hamburger meat. Now the reason that we decided to cook the hamburger meat, take it out, and then saute the vegetables before adding back the ground beef is because if you were to throw it all in the skillet together, you're not going to actually get a brown on that hamburger meat. Instead, what's going to happen is basically you're making a stew or a soup. All the meat and all the vegetables would soften, but nothing would get a good color on it. If you notice that your mixture is starting to look a bit dry, it could be perhaps that your tomatoes were not canned with as much fluid or juice. So feel free to add a little bit of water or even some chicken stock if necessary. While we've got our sauce going, we are going to dump our rotini. Once your pasta sauce has began to thicken and it's all kind of coming together into a nice thick mixture, just go ahead and kill the heat. At this stage, we're just waiting on the rotini to be ready. So let's take the opportunity to talk about the cheese. When I decided to create this recipe, the reason I chose pepper jack is because it's what I had in the fridge. That's really the purpose of this playlist, is going to be about realizing that you don't have to follow a specific recipe, make it up. The important thing is to just know what flavors go together. And I knew that the pepper jack, because it is a high moisture cheese, was going to melt well into the pasta and also add a little bit of kick to it. Also, while talking about the cheese, I don't grate mine when doing a baked pasta type situation because I kind of like for there to be some chunks of cheese inside, so when I scoop it up, there's a little bit of stringiness. If you grate it and then mix it into hot pasta, it's just going to disappear, similar to my cheddar jalapeno bread, which I'll link here. Go ahead and grab a large mixing bowl and also a baking dish because, like I said, it's going to make a lot of pasta. Alright, our pasta is ready. I have drained it and I've transferred it into the large mixing bowl. And I actually decided to get an even bigger bowl because the other one wasn't big enough, so yikes. Use a bowl of noodles. Pour in the chili sauce. Make sure it makes a schlepping noise. Then top it with the 8 ounces of sliced cheese. Give it a good mix. Now keep in mind, we're not really trying to make that cheese melt right now because we are going to transfer this whole concoction into the oven. Retrieve your baking dish and add the noodles. Now then, once you have the pasta in the baking dish, you have a decision to make, and I'm handing over the reins to you. You could top this with more cheese, like a thick layer across the top, sort of like a lasagna. Or you could toast some breadcrumbs. Pour that on top. Or you can leave it just the way it is right here, which is the decision that I am making. I know it looks like a lot of food, and it is. And that's the best part because that means that probably if you're a family of 4, you could freeze half of this. And then at a later date, you can pull it out of the freezer, let it come up to room temp, and then heat it up in the oven or in the microwave. Transfer this pasta into the 375-degree oven for about 25 to 35 minutes, depending on your oven. Now, like I mentioned before, I really wasn't sure if I was even going to get this video made today because it was a tough day. And I think it's important to be honest about that because, you know, with social media and with YouTube, it's easy to feel as though people's lives are perfect because you only see the highlight reel. Anyway, I know this isn't Montel and it's certainly not Oprah, but I felt like because I care about you guys and I care about this channel, that being honest is the best policy, and some days are just tough. Some days you really just don't feel it and you want to be able to pull something out of the freezer, and a recipe like this will help you with that. Alrighty guys, it's been 25 minutes. Are you ready? So it is ready, and guys, it looks delicious. Look at that toasted cheese on top. Because we didn't grate it, we still have chunks of cheese. And who doesn't want a chunk of cheese? Get a good bite. Oh, look at this cheese. So right off the bat, the flavors are super reminiscent of chili mac from your childhood. It's got the beef, it's got all those chili flavors in it. However, I do have to say, it's elevated. The rotini has caught all that sauce inside its little spirals, ensuring that every single bite is just ooey, gooey, saucy deliciousness. The peppers are sauteed perfectly. They're soft, they're tender, they've got a tiny brown, however, they're still maintaining some of their integrity. The beef is delicious, and that tomato just enhanced the richness and really brought out the beefy flavor. The cool thing about this recipe is you can make it your own. I mean, you saw what went into it, and surely in your pantry and your fridge, you have some combination of these ingredients that you could throw together into a pasta. Let's face it, how nice would it be to not have to cook dinner on a Tuesday night and just go over to the freezer and pull out something that you already know is delicious and you already know the family will love. Listen to her, she's freaking out. Simply delicious, simply easy, and simply freezable. Get baking, y'all.